Good evening, listeners, and welcome to this weekly English program. Today we'll talk about stories. Stories have existed long before recorded history, and the telling of stories has changed forms drastically throughout the ages. From cave painting to novels to movies, stories have always fascinated mankind. Although these methods of storytelling have changed, the desire to tell and hear stories has remained unchanged, and it still greatly impacts the way we look at life. The earliest form of storytelling was a series of cave paintings that date back to sometime between 15,000 and 13,000 BC that depicted animals and one image of human being. When closely examined, this were a very simplistic series of events. It tells us the rituals performed and the various hunting practices. What it tells us is a story. In 700 BC, the first printed story, the Epic of Gilgamesh, was created, and it began to spread from Mesopotamia to other parts of Europe and Asia. The story was actually carved on stone pillars for all to see, which spread the story around very quickly. Let's come to Aesop's fables. I'm sure you all must have read the Aesop fables or at least heard about Aesop fables. Aesop actually lived in 500 BC, but his stories were remembered for hundreds of years without a single shred of paper or other printed material. Isn't that amazing? Oral storytelling was so powerful and people remembered Aesop's fables so well that even 300 years later the stories were revered enough for mass production. Storytellers began to arise as very important figures in community. The ability to tell stories effectively and memorably was a very valuable skill. Why? Well, as wars were fought and valiant deeds were done, the people needed some way to remember them. Instead of simply stating facts, instead of just telling what happened, stories began to emerge as a way to preserve the raw emotions and sequence of events of the actual event. Shakespeare's plays and sonnets were meant to be published, but his status became legendary once they were. He was known as a great storyteller to many of his close friends, but soon became immortalized in the pieces that he produced. From a young street rat in London to being taught in every school hundreds of years later, he made his mark on literature forever. How did he do it? Storytelling. Let's talk about Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was famous for his keynotes. Whether launching new products or making an announcement, he agonized for hours over the details of his presentations. People were amazed at his ability to craft a narrative, to create and maintain suspense, and to deliver a solid message. It wasn't dazzling special effects or crazy props. It was plain storytelling. History is nothing but a series of stories that when told correctly can tell us lessons, give us insights into a variety of concepts or entertain us. Every story serves a purpose, even if it is to simply relay a message. Without history, without chronicle stories, mankind would never learn from his mistake, would never dream to emulate past heroes, would never see anything but the now. We would be clueless to the past and therefore helpless of the future. All the stories exist because of our uncontrollable urge to communicate. Whenever I read a good story, after the magic has enthralled me, I encounter a question. Are stories made of magic or they a product of logic? Well, that is the reason why, listeners, we have the magic and logic of stories as our topic for today. For this discussion, we have with us Chetan Joshi. Welcome, Chetan. For those of you who don't know who Chetan is, I'll just introduce Chetan Joshi for you. Chetan Joshi is a Pune-based author with a flair for fiction from the absurd to stark raving reality. He has abandoned his career in IT after 12 years. He has taken up writing as his mainstream profession now. His first book, The Blind Man's Buff, has received commendable literary praise from David Crystal, the author of the Cambridge Encyclopedia of the English Language. His second book was a graphic book, Animal Palette, which was very well received, and it was also nominated for the Best Book and Best Writer at the Comic Con 2012. His recently published novel is called Literally Yours, his collaborative creation with Bangalore-based writer Asha Francis. This is to be followed by Cocktail Carnival, which is going to be his collection of short stories. He has also written a Hindi feature film Ek Aur Sarab, which was released recently, and his animation feature film Gul Pakkaoli is also ready for release. Apart from this, he has also been certified by the British Council to teach creative writing and occasionally conducts writing workshops with the British Library and Living Bridge. Welcome, Chetan. We'll come directly to our topic. What is the magic and logic of stories for you?
The magic is that whenever you are telling a story, you can make other people visualize it. By making them imagine, you are taking them into another world. Stories are something that come into your mind like magic, but there is an iota of logic when you tell the story.
So what you mean to say is that stories are within us? Like as they say, world could be healed from violence, wars and other unwanted demons only if people could embrace all their worries, embarrassments, insecurities, happiness through any art form. So expression is the key here, right?
Yes, expression is the key. In fact, what I feel is all art forms are connected to each other. If you think you see a dream, that dream can be painted into a painting. I mean, you can sketch it, you can paint it. That painting will tell a story. A story will inspire someone to write a poem. That poem may turn into a song. Again, you are coming back to music. So it is all a cycle. All of these are interconnected. And story writing is one thing where it's the only form of art which I think we have studied somewhat in school.
Yes.
All of us in school have studied the art of writing. We've studied the craft of writing. We've studied grammar. We've studied vocabulary. We've been actually scolded by our teachers. We've been reprimanded by people at home to write well. And so we know what grammar is. We do know what composing thoughts into words means.
Yes.
And now we have to just do one more thing, that is try to convert imagination into words. Now what does this mean? It is absolute indulgence in an imaginary world. So it will take your mind away from all the frustrations that are there with you, around you. There could be so many insecurities, as you were saying. Those could be there. Then there are these violent thoughts that people have in their minds. They nurture such thoughts as to, go and harm somebody. All these, if they come into this domain of art forms, over there, art has that healing power. Art has that power of absolutely governing these things and turning them into harmless little pellets.
Yes.
All these things will turn into things which will not hurt somebody. So art has that. And I would say to all our listeners that if they are interested in any form of art, they can all be converted into stories. If you are interested in singing, it can lead you to writing a story. Any person who is interested in any form of art, whether he is a great singer or not, it doesn't matter. And what matters is he is indulgent in it. If he is indulgent, then he would want to tell a story. Just give yourself a try, give yourself a chance, and you will be a good writer.
Okay, so each and every art form can lead to storytelling. Yes, so can we say that can anyone be a storyteller or does it require some special skills?
You know what? The only skill that a person requires to be a writer is sit and write. What people do is they have lots of crazy ideas, they've got great thoughts in their mind, they come out with fantastic things to say, I've got this story and this story is going to be the biggest story in the world, or this is the story that's going to really make my career as a writer. But the only problem is they do not write. What they do is they just keep it in their mind. Now every person in this world has a story in his mind, but if he doesn't put pen to paper or his fingers to a typewriter or a keyboard, how is it going to come from his mind into other people's ears? Yes. They have to write it out. And they think that writing is supposed to be done as the last thing. They do not take it very seriously. They think that thinking up a story is very important. Yes, it is. But what do you do next? Unless you put it on paper, it is not going to go anywhere. Just now, whatever story I might be thinking in my mind, unless I write it out, how is anybody going to know that Chetan has a story to tell? Unless we take that effort, how can anybody think of being a writer? That is the only skill we need. We need the passion to write.
I understand that for writing, we need to have a pen and a paper and we just need to sit down and write. But again, I'm asking, how does one start about writing a story?
Okay. See, most often what people do is they start writing by saying that they want to write the first and the most important and the most fantastic sentence that they can come up with. They write that one fantastic sentence. Yes. Then they write another one and another one. They write a para. They say, wow, I've done a good job here. So they write another paragraph based on that steam and that inspiration that they have. Their language is also good. It flows very well. By the end of the third paragraph, they're exhausted and they wonder what they should write next. They've written 3 paras very well. It's also the beginning of a story, perhaps. but then they don't know how the fourth para is going to come from, where it is going to come from. They do not know that. So they think that they should try one more time. So next day again they try.
Yes.
Then what happens is, next day they are able to come out with 2 more paras with a lot of effort. In the third day, perhaps they'll say, okay, let's take a break. We'll write on next Sunday now. So the next Sunday they start writing. Over there they come out with 1 para, barely. And then their friend calls them over. They say, okay, I'll just go off. Again they try, next week. Now it's 1 more week, So they jump 1 week and then they start writing again. This time it doesn't come at all. So the next day they say, forget it, I don't want to write at all. Problem is that they started writing with good language, and then they thought that they would eventually come out with a good thought, which will eventually lead to a great story, and which will also have a fantastic ending. But it doesn't happen that way.
So it's the other way around.
It's the other way around. Yeah, you're right. The other way around is this, that first you have to have an idea. Keep it away. Don't suddenly start making stories with it. Keep it away. Let it grow on its own for a while. After a while, that idea will grow into some size. It will start taking a shape. Now you start playing with it. And then the next thing is, you come out with a simple story. So, if you ask me, I'll say that a writer has 3 seasons in his mind. 3 seasons. Every writer has 3 seasons. Anybody who wants to write. And every person might have a different season in his mind at the same time. So, say if I have an idea season just now. Idea season is when your mind is being pelleted. I mean, there are lots of ideas which are raining onto your mind.
Okay.
Anybody will realize that someday he's coming out with fantastic original jokes. Sometimes he's cracking fantastic jokes with friends. And even he wonders how he is being so witty. Another day he might not be so witty. So what happens is, just now it is raining jokes on him. If he writes them down, he can make fantastic one-liners out of them. So that is his idea season, where lots of ideas are coming in. Write them down. This is what another person might not do. A writer will realize that he is just now being showered by so many great ideas. He will write all of them down. So that is the idea season. Once you have a lot of them, you have a bag full of them, now slowly you will realize that these ideas are not, now they've receded. These ideas have started receding. So now it is time to turn these ideas into stories. That does not mean you start writing a 768-page novel diary. What you do is, you just write it out in 1 page. You write that story out in 1 page. That's it. If it is wrong, you crumble the page, you write it again.
Okay.
You can do that 10 times over. 10 pages is not a big deal. The problem is, if you write a 768-page novel and you have to tear it up after 700 pages, that will be sacrilege. So what you need is, you're just supposed to write the story in short, in a synopsis form. Now that synopsis will guide you throughout the long length of your long journey of writing a novel. So the second season is story season, where you design the story in the form of a synopsis. And the last season, that is the third season, is supposed to be the language season, where you bring in the best language that you have in you. You bring that out, and then you can enjoy your story because you know where it is going.
Yes.
You know that the story is going to end in a tragedy, or it's going to be a happy ending, or it's going to be a very dark ending, or it's going to be a funny ending. So you know where you're going. You might write the wrong story if you do not have a synopsis with you. So the best of language is the last of the seasons.
Okay.
That is a method that most people do not realize. These are not methods which I have read in books anywhere. These are things that I have conjured up by my own self to try and see what is the method in the madness. What is the logic in the magic of stories? Is this: once an idea has come to your mind, take your time, be patient. Writing is a very simple method, but it is a lonely method. It is something that you sit alone and write, and do not expect people to clap when you're writing.
Like, I remember this quote: most of the basic material a writer works with is acquired before the age of 15. Is it something to do with the season of idea, like acquiring ideas? Will my perception be shaped through that? Is it that we are talking about in an idea season?
He's absolutely right about this age of 15. But that does not mean ideas in their absolute form. Your capacity to imagine and your capacity to let ideas invade your mind grows to its fullest up to 15.
Okay.
So all your emotions that you have felt, right from the way your parents have scared you at a point, if you don't go to sleep just now, this monster will come and gobble you up, or things like that. That is where your whole concept of getting afraid, that has formed, that has taken shape. Your idea of fear has already taken shape. You've also giggled as a child, nonsensically or maybe idiotically, when something silly has happened.
Yes.
That has given you a sense of humor. So after that, all kinds of jokes come to you because you have laughed at life. all ideas, they come if you have all these navras that we have in us. If all of them have been tapped and given some charge right in your formative years of your life, then they have the capacity to draw more things out of life, out of experiences. You can draw all these things from further things that you come. So ideas, the basics have been already sowed in our minds and our hearts. It is later that you reap the fruits.
For idea season, are there any exercises to strike up more good ideas?
See, most people wait for inspiration to strike so that they'll write a story. Now, inspiration is such a, elusive element that inspiration might come to you once in the third standard, which is past. Then it might strike you again when you fall in love, perhaps. Then that's when a person starts writing lots of love stories and love poems and all. And the third is when you're settled, very well settled in life, and you think, okay, now I got to start writing something. Let me start doing something new. So he starts writing stories, or maybe poems, or maybe songs. He starts writing those. So inspiration might strike you thrice in your lifetime. So how do you write stories every day?
Right.
So that is there. There are certain methods which do work, and I have used this. I have used these in my workshops, and I have had amazing results, absolutely miraculous. What I do is I ask all the people, the participants, to write a list of characters. Write a list of characters, 10 characters. Like, say, suppose a shoplifter, or maybe a magician, or a hypnotist, or maybe you have a policeman there, a spy, or a monk. You have a list of these. So there's a list of 10. The next list I make is a list of locations. So locations as in beach, say graveyard. Then suddenly I talk about a library, then a busy street, a market, or maybe a flea market in Goa, anything like that. I make a list of 10 like these. The third list I ask them to make is a list of objects.
Okay.
Objects like, say, boomerang.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe then I have a keychain, or maybe it's a gun. The next could be a bottle of poison. Like that, I make a list of 10. Now, when I have these 3 lists, I randomly pick one from each of these lists.
Okay.
So then I might suddenly have a monk in a graveyard with a boomerang. Now, such a crazy combination is bound to give you some kind of a story or the other. So try this out. It is something which is fun. It's absolutely something you would love to do on a Sunday afternoon and see whether it comes out with crazy, absolutely outrageous stories. Now, if it's a monk with a boomerang in a graveyard, what will happen is he's either going to throw it, he's going to ride it, he's going to cast some magic on it, and something crazy will come out of it. And believe me that you will have a story. What you are doing by using this is you are trying to open up your story designing faculties of your mind. This we are opening that story making circuit. It has not been used for a long time now, perhaps. So you are suddenly awakening it by these external shocks.
Yes.
What happens by using these methods is, these artificial methods try to trigger your brain and try to trigger your imagination points. And from where these stories will come out.
After this idea stage is over, you have talked about the story stage. Okay, now I am receiving ideas from all ends. How do I know I have that $1 million idea?
Ideas are priceless.
Yes.
Don't drop any idea ever by thinking that it is something too simple. Once you have written them down, you don't have to worry how you are going to remember them. So then you can start making a story. Sit on a Sunday or sit on a Monday. In fact, I would say on a working day it's better. You have to search for a time in your day where you can find the same slot of time free every day. So if it is morning 5 o'clock every day, then you should wake up at 5. If it is at night 11 o'clock when after everybody is asleep, that should be your time to write. Or maybe you have half an hour or 1 hour at office where you are free. Every day it should be at the same time, lunchtime perhaps. So that can be the time you can sit and write. It need not be elaborate writing. You just have to have a habit of writing every day.
So let us elaborate more on this story stage. Now I have an idea. I've started writing upon it. Okay. Now how do I move forward? Like there are times when I get stuck. There are times when we feel that, oh no, this idea is not worth it. Let's go to another idea. We take up pieces, we leave them, and again we go to a third idea. How should I recover from this moods of writing?
Okay. See, the first thing that most people get caught in, including me, in the beginning of writing spells that I had, people get caught in language first.
Yes.
People get caught in language so badly that they don't even have an idea that they need an idea. So they think that good language will eventually turn into a good idea. So let's not have that happen.
Yeah.
So what you can simply do is, it's like what Ernest Hemingway had said, that when you write a story, knock off all the beautiful words.
Yes.
And then if it still makes sense, then you have a story. So,
Nice.
if you start getting impressed with your own words, by your own words, then what is happening is that you are not impressed with your thoughts. Once you know that you are not using impressive words, first try and figure out what the ending is. You have an idea, try to search for the ending.
Okay.
You may have to change your ending later, but just now you have to have some kind of a compass which will tell you which direction to go. So you have an idea, just say, okay, how is this story going to end? Let your instincts take over. You don't have to be very logical there. Let magic and logic keep interchanging.
Like I remember whatever stories I have read till now, I only remember the story and not the language.
Absolutely.
So now I have an idea. I've started writing upon it. I've also got a nice flow. There comes, which everybody talks about, I've got this writer's block. Like, how should I overcome this? Are there any exercises there to overcome it, or how does it happen?
See, R.K. Narayan had once said that writer's block is supposed to be a Western concept.
Okay.
It doesn't, Indian writers can't afford to have writer's block. Apart from the jokes, a writer's block is something where it is not that you cannot write any further, but just now your mind is distracted elsewhere.
Yes.
And it may be locked. It is blocked because you want to forge through without a change in your path. A writer's block will be if you do not want to change your path of thought. If you change that, you'll suddenly find there are several roads. For example, if you see that, it happened to me in a story of mine where I wanted these lovers to part ways. But I did feel that they should part ways, and whatever happened, they just weren't getting away from each other. They didn't even have a reason to actually separate. So why was I doing that? I was in a block because I had a pre-decided purpose in mind. And that purpose was not really what the story was. The story was about how two people interact. It is not about how they actually depart.
Yes.
So they need not have parted ways was an idea that did not touch my mind at all. If you want to shift the ending somewhere, you might find another path. A writer's block is when you're fixated on how and what should happen exactly. But stories have a life of their own. They have a million other options that can take place.
Yes.
The way in life, if you decide that every day is going to work out in the same way, does it really work out in the same way? Same way for a writer, he wants a particular thing or a series of events to happen in a particular way. If they do not happen, he thinks he's blocked. He just has to unblock things by just breaking it down. Breaking the story. Until now, whatever he has written, just break it down into smaller parts and suddenly realize, just throw one of those points out and suddenly he'll see, okay, there's a way to flow ahead. So a block is something that essentially a writer has written out for himself.
Okay.
He is the one who's made the block happen.
Yes.
A writer's block is something that has been designed by the writer. If he is able to just unblock it by just removing one of those boulders, suddenly he'll see lots of things flowing.